Start. Welcome to anyone joining us. I think Cyrus is going to be taking this video. So thank you for coming, everyone. This is exciting that you're here. My name is Stephanie Nina Pitsirilos. I am a prose writer, a comic book writer, a zinester. If you guys don't know zines are just like radical, self-published, do your own thing types of writing. I'm a mother to Amazons. I like to say that. My professional background is in public health. I'm so honored that you guys are here. My best friend here, my family here. It's just great to be here. I'm also a board member of Graphic Mundi, Penn State University Press, where I review graphic novel submissions. So I actually want to ask you guys what you want me to read. I'm happy to read. You have a selection here. I could take you to Jean in Speculative Fiction for Dreamers. I see a nod here. That one follows a New Yorker preteen in New York City's in the 70s, 80s, who uses Marvel comic books as her map to navigate life in wormholes. So it's got a little sci-fi edge to it, or not. Could be literary. So that's Jean, and that's the one that won the 2022 Chautauqua Janus Prize. If you wanted to be transported to historical Greece, 1922 Anatolia, Smyrna, the Great Catastrophe, and 1944 Athens, I have a historical fiction novel I could read, actually a short story based on a novel. I could read that. As a treat, I could also take you to a story that takes place in outer space with a fungoid Casanova, which is a fancy way of saying a horny mushroom alien who is ravaging the hearts of the galaxy and star maps. So I'm going to leave it up to you. I saw a nod for Jean.
I think I would. Yeah.
Okay.
That's my first.
All right, we're going to do.
One is,
okay. All right. Sounds good. That sounds good. So, as a warning, and so warning to my U.S. friends that are, or anywhere in the world friends that are listening, so it does have cursing, drug use, and suicide. So, just a warning. And checking my kids are over there and they're not listening. So, Jean, and I should say it's in Speculative Fiction for Dreamers, a wonderful anthology published by Ohio State University Press, Mac Green. Yeah, ask me.
is it okay to have a snippet video?
Oh yeah, do anything, please. I love, I'm a bit of a camera hand. You can do pictures, you can do social media, whatever you like. It's all right. My mom's story is legend. It all played out during what the industry said was the Bronze Age of Marvel. Though I gotta disagree. To me, it was golden, classic. She fulfilled every expectation society had of a Nuyorican young female in the 70s. Sexual to sinvergüenza level, prone to drugs, poverty-stricken, and with a dab of the mystical. She has the kind of story that gets immortalized by a plastic sleeve and white backing board of a comic book protector. It's a burden to try to live up to the stereotype, but my mom was up for the task, at least you can say that. I don't have any living memories of her except for one. The rest are family tales extracted from my grandmother and aunt with a little coaxing, plenty of Budweisers, and wormholes. Those little rips through the fabric of time are how she peers in from yesterday, denying grandma a fresh dawn of the promised, holy tomorrow. Me, a grounded sense of the present. No surprise, my mother had a supernatural ability to fuck things up good, not just for herself, but the universe around her. Wormholes. I'm notoriously good at documenting a trip down the tunnel, and it drives Grandma crazy. She not understanding my obligations as the Rigelian recorder 211. Embuste, Grandma likes to protest, not buying that wormholes exist when I bring up the past, nor that I'm a robot made by the Rigelians to aid their colonization of space. I gotta write this stuff down, Grandma. I'm a witness to Earth's events, removed from its consequences. But she hasn't ever read Thor, issue 132, to understand my origins as companion to Thor in his Vikings battles in the Black Galaxy, and later, sidekick to the Watcher. She just doesn't understand how anything is possible in deep space. Even if Grandma doesn't believe the space robot witnessed writing bit, she shouldn't refute the existence of wormholes. They're everywhere in our neighborhood, and a particularly nasty one resides in our apartment. Science, in our situation, backs that they are traversable. Our colonized, non-white bodies provide the exotic matter, and the fucked up abundance of negative energy density that surrounds us account for wormhole stabilization. Plus, they get everyone. This ain't no invisible boogeyman that one tripping homie in our project shouts is eating him up, yet still I get the embuste from Grandma. Perhaps, though too convenient an explanation, she's routinely shot by an obliterating memory beam upon exiting a wormhole's winding narrative, like Kirk on Amaranth. But ghosts, yeah, those Grandma believes in. Sometimes I'm not traveling these wormholes and my feet are firmly touched down in Earth's present. Like now, I can report how, with Aunt Ceci's help, Grandma's getting ready to do a seance for Rita's daughter, Esmeralda, another junkie who OD'd. Because of these circumstances surrounding Esme's death, Grandma's about to be sucked into the Sankofa's wormhole's gravitational force, and I'm getting ready to go down with her. Sankofa wormhole. The photograph was a wormhole like no other, the Sankofa wormhole, the one just before the hallway curtain of glass beads separating the tucked-away bedrooms from the rest of our apartment. No fronting whom it repped. The tattered edges of its Kodak Promesco paper camouflaged a gnarled spheroidal mouth that spewed out radiation as it licked its chops in eternal hungriness. The photograph was always something Grandma walked past, eyes avoiding its entrapment. It had been in the living room on top of the television set for years until Aunt Ceci finally decided that it did more harm than good there, staring at us, locking the room in a somber silence and forcing us down continuous trips of her universe. Aunt Ceci moved it to the hallway one day. Like Talkie Tina and Willie the Dummy, we knew we could never get rid of it. It must be so hard seeing that picture there, Rita's cousin now says, gesturing to the photograph. It's going to be that way, especially for Rita. Circumstances of death were one thing, but Rita's cousin, in her immense stupidity, helped activate the Sankofa wormhole with acknowledgement of existence. Of course, Grandma fights it. I wasn't looking there, Grandma answers pertly, drawing her eyes away from the photograph of my mother. I was looking at the closet. Spirits always like to hide there until Grandma calls for them. And of course, she doesn't win against the laws of wormhole physics, the hungry mouth. The pull is too strong. Down we go. My mother had chestnut hair when she didn't dye it that ridiculous red color, autumn brown eyes, and a motherfucking mouth like no other. She was Grandma's eldest, but showed none of the respectable traits that you burden a firstborn with. Aunt Ceci says, "Buck wild" is how Grandma Juan described her when he complained about Grandma's inability to raise respectable girls. The way Aunt Ceci describes him saying that, you get the sense that he was pointing out Grandma's failure at her sole purpose in life. A confession that his daughters had become the slur that islanders use to describe the diaspora, contaminated with New York's urbanity. New Eurekan. You could hear the shame in his voice. Then he'd shuffle out the living room to get another beer. Grandma had tolerated his shit-faced behavior as something that came along with the unfortunate luck of being born with a Y chromosome. But soon, less and less money came into the house, into a house barely making ends meet. As far as Grandma knew, Budweiser hadn't gone up in price. He'd come home later and was irritable, and more notably down. Finally, it all came out one day, the day he popped the question to Grandma. She had been putting away some socks in the dresser when he called her from the bed. "Come here, I've got something for you." "I don't need any more of what you've got." "Shit, I don't need that from you too, but come here." Grandma said that she turned around not really expecting anything special. His hands were empty. Then she saw that his sleeve was rolled up and there was an elastic band around the top of his arm. The needle was lying on the comforter of the bed. "Come on," he said. "It's good. Do it with me." She had stared at him for 5 long seconds without any response.
not a refusal to join him man and wife into a spiral down the big bad world of heroin, not an acceptance of his invitation to say, so long to life, fuck my mom and Aunt Ceci, they could fend for themselves. In what I would call a space-time anomaly, because really it was just 5 seconds, so how could she have seen and felt all this in that small time frame? Grandma says that she saw her fingers maneuvering a thin needle into buttonhole after buttonhole on an unholy number of shirts. Hours and hours, day after day, in the Midtown factory that was her job. She felt the start of a tremor in her hands from working outside the labor laws, and without the later benefits of Social Security. Because you think those greedy fuckers of owners made them official on the books? There was no carpal tunnel syndrome for a female Puerto Rican, or workers' comp, or anything remotely like that. You worked until you were worthless. Red buttons, blue buttons, red buttons with white polka dots, striped buttons, black buttons with white polka dots. She sewed, what, 5 million of those fucking blouses, pants, and sweaters, only to return home to wait on a charity line of Church of the Holy Name of Jesus to get her girl some clothes? Meanwhile, her eldest daughter was becoming wilder and wilder because she wasn't there to watch her. The Thanksgivings with a malnourished chicken, not a pernil. The Christmases without Santa. So this is where the goddamn money went. Grandma says he picked up the needle from the bed and waved it to her. That it was then when he saw my mother staring at them from the bedroom door. It was the one time in Grandma's memory that my mom had chosen to be silent instead of having something smart to say. So, Grandma made up for my mom's sudden metamorphosis into St. Benedict by pulling out the drawers of the dresser and hurling them at Grandpa Juan with an explosion of curses that my mother mentally added to her already notorious vocabulary. After he'd been released from the hospital, he moved out. Here is how the ride through the Chautauqua wormhole ended, an infuriating question after such a journey. Was it, what did you do to my poor daddy that drove my mother away? Or was it, what was daddy doing that felt so good that it drew him away from us? Did the answer matter? Because it was what my mother spent her last days in 821 Columbus finding out.
He started doing heroin as a grandfather?
So, in the story, yeah, so the grandfather did start doing heroin and was trying to invite his wife to join him in doing it. And the young daughter at the time was watching from the doorway and cementing. And ultimately, spoiler, this is the daughter of that daughter coming to terms, and this is what the story is mostly about, coming to terms with losing your mother from ODing and heroin and growing up with that as part of the family legacy.
The mother or the father?
Well, the father too,
Yeah.
but the father didn't really matter. He was not really there. It was, she never really met her mother. She was 5 when it was her grandfather. So it's from the perspective of a preteen in New York City who never really met her mother because she entered this life in heroin, and that's very much reflective of New York City in the 70s in particular, the crack and heroin epidemic, and particularly it affected the Puerto Rican and Black community. And her coming to terms, and later on in the story, and how she uses comic books as a way to understand life and coming to terms with that. It's fiction, but the wormholes are very much based on my own family history, where that was also part of family history. And I always have to start and say my mother was a loving mother and is alive. And it's me very much taking the pain of my grandmother losing a daughter at a young age who was headed in that trajectory. My mother, actually, that scene, did walk in on her father offering my grandmother that. So, and that's what I call wormholes. These things, this intergenerational trauma, these stories that we inherit, either because they're told to us or because we are exposed to the consequences of some of this family history. So very much taking, and what if my aunt, my mom's sister, who died unexpectedly by jumping out of a car on the Henry Hudson Highway and police telling my grandmother, don't investigate why. You know, no one's gonna, you know, as a Puerto Rican woman, and they said this to her literally, they'll take the rest of your kids away. Why was your daughter out at 16? Don't ask questions on why she died. And never having answers why she, jumped out. And this is where we have our conversation of what is speculative. What if my Aunt Maria lived and she was headed, sadly, in that trajectory? And what if she had a daughter? And taking family history and making it into fiction.
What I found interesting about your story, I liked it very much, but you really don't use dialogue.
In that excerpt, yeah.
Okay.
So this was just the first few pages.
Yeah.
It's interesting, you say that, and, you know, there's a
I
lot
find
of
dialogue really hard to write.
I love dialogue. So in some of my works, you will find dialogue. And it's interesting you say that because an audiobook company actually approached me initially when Publishers Weekly singled out this story among the many beautiful stories in this anthology and was trying to jump on, getting it developed. And one of the things I was like, wait, there's not enough dialogue. And, I think that's very much testimony to the different ways we do storytelling, and oral storytelling being part very much of indigenous and African diaspora communities where there's just different ways of storytelling. But yes, particularly in that section, there wasn't much dialogue. I feel like Nova, who's the character, she's so talky that she herself becomes a voice. I mean, if you would ask me.
Yeah. Yeah, I have difficulty with dialogue. Something I'm working on. It's very difficult. Sorry, I'm looking like almost our daughter.
No, you don't have to apologize whatsoever. I'm so honored. Thank you guys for joining for that part. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I missed that.
Do you want me to read you? No, I mean,
I think they're just gonna go look at the stuff.
as long as you're with them.